Remember, don't just shoot. I want to bring him this way first so I have a nice big gap. Then I shoot all the way through and go back. My rib cage is against the head, and that should keep him nicely in place. Again, I want to be worried that he's going to keep trying to move his hips out this way. You can block somewhat with a hand, but what I really want to do is get my head to the other side as quickly as possible. Hi guys, I'm Casey Jones, head coach SBG Shropshire, and I'm here today with my fellow SBG black belt Chris Coltrane, and we're going to show you a couple of submissions from the side control or north-south position when we're transitioning. Okay, so Chris, can you lie down in side control for me, please? So, we're going to start here. What can happen, as you may have looked at before, is from this position it can be very tight and I can't seem to get any grips going or be able to get any offense going. So I'm going to use my low north-south position, which is my rib cage onto the head, in order to try and keep Chris controlled. Now with this, sometimes he'll start to push back a lot more, so he tries to push me off, and in this process he'll lift his head off the ground. Once I have this lifted, I'm going to use this hook to keep his head off the ground while I shoot my hand nice and deep through, and I put myself back to the same position. Okay. Now from here, what we're going to try and look to do is I'm going to look to try and get my shoulder right in the middle of Chris's chest, and when that's in the chest, that's going to make this nice little triangle guillotine shape. From there, I'm going to look to try and take away all that space and put pressure across his carotid artery here. So I'm here, I try and go for my normal north-south. Chris starts to push and he lifts his head while he pushes. Now when I go back, I'm going to shoot this through deep, and I want to make sure that my elbow gets right to the floor here. So my elbow and wrist are both on the floor, and then I put my rib cage right against the side of his head here. So my rib cage really does all the control, keeps his head under control. So once I have this through, I'm nice and low, weights in the toes, and now I should feel like he's nicely bundled up. Now, in order to get this to choke, my shoulder needs to be further over this direction, which Chris will usually counter by trying to move round in this direction here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my head over to this side. I'm going to take a back step and brace with my hand here, while this comes underneath, kicks straight, and now I begin to sink my weight back and down. So I'm here, Chris starts to push. As I come around, and gives me a gap. As soon as I get this gap, I don't want to try and, if I see a small gap, I don't want to try and put it straight through, because he'll put his head back down flat. First of all, I'm going to lift and give myself a nice gap for me to be able to beat him to the chase. So once I've got that big gap, my arm's all the way through, I now need to start getting my rib cage into the right place and my shoulder into the right place. So I'm going to start walking my shoulder over. If Chris starts to bring this round and block, I'm going to try and really drive my head down to this side of his body. Once I get to here, I now need to get my rib cage closer. So I'm going to back step. Once I back step, this leg comes back through, and this should be very tight now. And I'll just put a little bit of weight down to close that gap. So if I just do one time about you, Chris. So when I have here, what's going to create the choke on Chris is the lack of space in this frame. So I need to close this off and get this nice and tight. So I'm going to bring my rib cage closer to my elbow, and I want to bring my shoulder closer to that chest. Then the lack of space is what's going to constrict around the neck. So here I shoot this through, so my elbow's flat on the floor. I put my shoulder and head into the right place, and now when I take this back step and this one comes through, there's very little space. Then I begin to square myself up, keeping a bit of a squeeze, and put my weight back and down this way. So if I use you, please, Chris. I'm going to move this way. So we're here. Again, I'm trying to transition through. Anytime I see a little bit of space under Chris's head, remember, don't just shoot. I want to bring him this way first so I have a nice big gap. Then I shoot all the way through and go back. My rib cage is against the head, and that should keep him nicely in place. Again, I want to be worried that he's going to keep trying to move his hips out this way. You can block somewhat with a hand, but what I really want to do is get my head to the other side as quickly as possible. Once my head's over the side, I can use my hand to keep my weight in place. Back step, shoot this one through, and now just a small squeeze. Should only need one hand. Sometimes you might want to bring the other hand just to seal the connection up a little bit. Okay, so we look from the other angle. Yeah, this way. I think this way. So here, I have the head, lift, make sure I've got a big gap to shoot into. If you need to, you can use this hand as well. Make sure that goes through nice and deep. And now I have here. Now I've got his head stuck. If Chris tries to get out of this is very difficult. He may try and push my head away. So he'll need to hand fight to get my head down towards the floor. Once my head's down here, I should have a good base now. So when he's trying to escape, this should be very hard for him. My head's blocking the way. I back step, step under, and now I should be in a good place to start my choke. So I start to squeeze my bicep, and I just let my weight sink and relax backwards. And then we should have a perfect north-south choke. Thank you very much, guys. Anytime you want to come down to SPG Shropshire, please feel free to pop in. We always like visitors. Thank you very much.